Welcome to the show. I'm antisocial. And this is the Antisocial Network.
I want to talk to her, but my face is up against the wall. Yeah, I think she wants to talk to me, but I'm antisociable. Yeah.
In this week's episode, I dive into the wacky and mysterious world of white people with dreadlocks. And I ask the age-old question, just what the fuck is up with white people and dreads? Thanks for tuning in! This is a difficult topic to cover, because some people might argue I have no stake in this. I'm not black, and I don't have dreadlocks. Any self-righteous crusade I embark on to police white hair can easily be perceived as a false flag. Why is this white woman so concerned over something that doesn't affect her, people will wonder. Similar to saying, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. Someone could argue, if you think dreads are offensive, don't get them. Simple as that. Not to mention, I've had this conversation with black people who have told me they don't find dreads on white people offensive. In fact, I've spoken with a black woman who does hair and whose specialty is dreads and who has dreaded white hair, and she's told me it's fine. Why would I have a problem with something if she, a black woman who does dreads on white people, told me she doesn't think it's racist? Plus, I'm not trying to dampen her business. Part of me wants her to get rich off giving all the dumb white people dreads that want them. With so many other examples of day-to-day systemic racism, why on earth would this be something to focus on? It's virtue signaling, right? Well, for one, black people are not a monolith, and just because some black people tell me they don't find it offensive, doesn't mean I'm going to start using the N-word. Plus, for me, it's the unwavering confidence of these white people with dreads that gets me. I've confronted several white people about their dreads, and instead of engaging in an honest discourse about the history or acknowledging facts like black people can't get a job with the same hairstyle, they'll fly into a defensive rage about their Viking heritage or go off on some unverifiable historical claim to the hairstyle. It's wild. It's that reactionary caucasity that's got me asking, what the fuck is up with white people and dreads? Almost as soon as I started research for this episode, I wanted to quit. 2 of the first articles I stumbled upon were written by well-intentioned white people that came off totally tone-deaf. I'm gonna be one of them, I thought. Just another Karen that thinks she's a Haley. The first article I read was a 2016 CNN piece written by a white, or at least white-presenting, woman named Emanuela Grinberg entitled, "Dear White People with Dreadlocks, Some Things to Consider." What intrigues me so much about white people's obsession with dreads is their persistence to legitimize white people wearing them by somehow claiming it's our heritage or ancestral birthright. Look, it would be infinitely easier to accept white dreadlocks if there was an admission that it was an homage to black culture, but it's this false narrative and blatant erasure that's a fucking problem. Grinberg immediately lost credibility for me when in her first few paragraphs she writes, "It's hard to tell who had them first, because early humans, lacking combs or styling products, probably roamed the planet with matted hair." Excuse me, what? Are we just supposed to let that slide, Emanuela? First of all, dreadlocks are not just matted hair. It's a hairstyle, and when white people leave their hair unkempt and unwashed until it mats up, that is not dreadlocks. White people who wear dreadlocks have to deliberately style them into dreadlocks and then use products to maintain that state. Black dreadlocks, however, are considered a protective style for natural black hair and do not require chemicals to treat. Second of all, the author comparing dreadlocks to the matted hair of early humans sounds strangely reminiscent of racist comparisons to apes and harkens back to that time Don Imus referred to the players of the WNBA as, quote, nappy-headed hoes. It was difficult for me to take anything more in the article seriously after that point because all I saw was a white apologist trying to justify dreads she didn't even wear. However, the article did quote Black author, activist, and advocate Feminista Jones, who said that her research informed her that Indian monks wore dreadlocks long before they reached the Western Hemisphere, so I'm not sure anyone has a particular claim. She went on to say, I used to wear them, and it wasn't for any spiritual reason, and I wasn't a Rasta. I just liked how they looked on me. I wonder if an Indian person could say I was appropriating them. For a white person to then grab this quote and use it to infer that no one can appropriate dreadlocks is the part that's tone deaf. Let's not pretend that black and brown people wearing each other's hairstyles is the same as white people doing it. And again, if respecting culture and honoring heritage was at the core of white dreads, we wouldn't be having this discussion. When I posted about white people with dreads on my social media, my white friend, who used to have her hair in dreads for years, dug her heels in, insisting that historically, white people have always worn dreadlocks and that she had hers because of her Viking roots. What a joke! She did not have dreads because she wanted to reconnect with her ancestors. She had dreads because she smoked pot at Warped Tour in the 90s and liked Bob Marley. Case closed. It should be noted that the word dreadlock derives from Rastafarians, who are widely attributed with popularizing the look in Western culture. So I ask you, if a white person who wears their hair like this because of their heritage, like my ex-friend of 10 years who chose that hill to die on, why did she call them dreadlocks? Surely her Viking ancestors had a different name for this hairstyle, right? And if she wanted to hold steadfast to that excuse, didn't she owe it to herself and her cultural identity to call them by the name of her people? I mean, she's the Viking historian, not me. The reason it's not the same for white people to borrow trends and styles from people of color as it is for black and brown people to do it is because traditionally, white people are the oppressors. And whether you say you don't have a racist bone in your body doesn't matter. Systemic racism is a fact. Disproportionately black-populated for-profit prisons are a thing. Job discrimination and termination of black people because of their natural hair is a thing. Redlining exists. Furthermore, as a consequence of this reality, black and brown people in America, by definition, cannot be racist. Racism requires that the discrimination be targeted towards a marginalized group or minority, which white people are not. Sure, black people, indigenous people, and people of color can be prejudiced towards white people, but as @anarch_king so eloquently wrote on Twitter in December of 2020, if you're a white person and a black person hates you simply because you're white, that isn't racism against white people. That's a trauma response from a racist oppressive system. Racism against white people doesn't exist. So to reiterate, just because a black woman explains the origins of dreadlocks being traced back to multiple cultures and wonders aloud if Indian people could claim black people wearing dreads was appropriation, doesn't mean that white people who are wearing dreads in America today can't be appropriating the style. The next article that popped up when I googled white people with dreadlocks was this gem of a title. I'm a white man who used to wear dreads. I don't think it was cultural appropriation. Ugh, Lord, give me strength. I mean, before we even dive into this one, can I just remind white people that you don't get to decide what's racist? You also don't get to decide what's a microaggression, what appropriation is, or use "it's just a joke" when repeating your "I'm not racist, but" bullshit. What so many white people don't understand, and I admit it took me decades, is that whether something is racist or not is not quantifiable by data. You don't require peer-reviewed research to believe black people. I read an angry comment online on one of these articles that read, "For some reason, through reading books, watching videos, cultural appropriation and dreadlocks I've found gets skimmed over. No one I've found goes in depth. My POC friends think dreadlocks are fine and feel that white people are spreading misinformation about shit they don't know about. So please send me some links and articles rather than ignorant shit." They think they can research their way out of being racist. They want to devil's advocate their way into a reality that doesn't exist. If you want to know about appropriation and dreadlocks, do the fucking work. Don't ask strangers on the internet to assign you a reading list. I'm constantly hearing white men who accuse me of being angry and divisive, and that we're all the same when it comes down to it, and people just need to realize that. That it's people like me who are creating race division when there isn't any. Look, Chad, wishing for world peace doesn't fucking will it into existence. Saying you don't see color doesn't negate a person of color's lived experience when it comes to systemic racism. And just because the principal at your private high school made you shave off your mohawk when you were 15 doesn't mean you've been oppressed because of how you look or that you understand what it feels like to be black. I wish that was an exaggeration, but Stein Talone said precisely that in his article where he proudly proclaims that he's a white guy who used to wear dreads and he doesn't see the problem. He starts by saying, "Twice my hair was a source of tension between my school and I, an anecdote that might be shocking were it not for the fact that I am a white European." Barf. Sit down, Stein. No one is shocked that a white man has experienced adversity. Y'all love to tell us all the time. Has this guy ever heard of a school dress code? Do you know how often I or my friends were sent to the principal's office in school because our shorts were too short or our bra straps were showing? And he wants to relay 2 stories from high school when he was discriminated against because he had a mohawk and then later dreads. He acts like it's a real eye-opening aha moment for him, saying that it was the first time that he realized how he physically appeared could influence how the world treated him. Oh, gag me with a spoon. It took you 15 years and being told to cut your hair for you to realize what exactly? That as a white man who up until that point had experienced zero hardship, it sucks having your rights infringed upon in any way? I'm not going to buy this bullshit you're spinning now that it was that moment you realized racism was unfair. The entire intent of this long-winded opening about being made to follow rules in high school just like everybody else, but disguised as adversity, is the kind of petty grudge white men carry with them their entire lives in order to claim that white privilege doesn't exist. They'll say, "White privilege doesn't exist. I had to cut my mohawk off in high school." And they'll be like 100% serious. But I digress. Reggae Chad goes on to explain that it was his love for black music and revolutionary politics that moved him to grow and lock his hair. He says that he was so enamored with reggae and the Rastafarian movement in Jamaica that in the 10th grade he did a speech about it, starting with the word Jah. Jesus Christ, man, get a grip. I was just reminded how much I loved ska when I was in high school, and how the trademark black and white checkers, which denote racial unity, made up most of my wardrobe and bedroom aesthetic. I also did a speech in 10th grade, but about ska. You don't see me wearing fucking dreadlocks. This asshole goes on and on for paragraphs about the inequities he faced because he had dreadlocks, lamenting the fact that he was always regarded as a stoner and felt like he was constantly having to prove himself. "Let me tell you, that shit is tiring," he whines. He rattles on for pages using 25-cent words and making claims why he was into his dreads for intellectual reasons. And even if it was for aesthetics, he can't be blamed for missing the mark a little. Not when he knew so much about Rastafarians. It didn't matter that he eschewed literally every other tenet of Rastafarian culture. His deep respect and understanding for black culture was clearly radiating through his hairstyle. And when people didn't get that, then he was just the victim. Is this fetishizing blackness? Just because you want to be black, and just because you use a bunch of big words to overcompensate for those years you felt you had to prove yourself being persecuted as just a stoner, doesn't mean you are not appropriating. You can learn everything there is to learn about Jamaica. You don't get to be Jamaican. He spends all his time desperately trying to prove that because he experienced adversity for having dreads that he somehow earned them. Contrived persecution isn't the same as true adversity. You can't tattoo your face, then claim it's the same as racism when you don't get hired because of it. While black people also face discrimination for wearing dreadlocks, that is a protective style for their natural hair. Reggae Chad chose to do this, then spent a decade complaining about the perceived unfairness he faced. In his bogus, self-serving wank piece, he says, "Having dreadlocks meant having to prove myself. There was always the feeling that I had to be taken seriously or simply listened to, justified considered being equal, justified not being seen as just a stupid stoner." Cry me a river, Reggae Chad. He says this without any sense of irony that black people face this every day, without choice, due to the color of their skin. Not to mention women. He could have cut his hair at any time, but he had to prove a point. Not a spiritual point. He wanted to be the victim. I'm not saying every white person with dreadlocks has this motivation, but when a white guy writes a 10-page justification piece about his perceived persecution when cutting his dreads after 10 years, it reads a lot like he's trying to convince himself more than anybody else. I mean, that's what these white people with dreads do. They should be on their apology tour, but instead they're doubling down. Reggae Chad correctly asserts that cultural appropriation is a real thing, and not some conspiracy against white people, and defines it as taking an aspect of a culture outside of one's own, without authority or right, often with disregard towards the culture of origin. I take no issue with that definition, but then he goes on to state that not all appropriation is offensive, because as he puts it, no one is concerned about the Vietnamese use of baguettes. What a bonehead! He says that Vietnamese people making French baguettes would only be offensive if they tried to claim they had invented baguettes, or that they could make baguettes better than the French. He continues on with this daft comparison, stating that Americans eating pho and fusion food is not problematic. What the fuck is he going on about? Was a fucking baguette ever fired from a job because of its hair? Does pho have feelings? Clearly the nuances of appropriation versus appreciation was completely lost on this guy. Reggae Chad, I'm starting to think your feelings of inadequacy have nothing to do with your hair, bro. Stop projecting. Either way, you're making me hungry, and I need a snack. Let's take a quick break.
And I'm baking Jamaica, and I think I'm a Rasta. My hair looks like pasta, I think I'm a Rasta. Baking Jamaica, baking Jamaica, I'm baking Jamaica, man.
If you're bored with your cat's current litter, then you're in for a treat. While some cat litters change colors to inform you about your cat's health, Yummy Litter is the only cat litter that changes color to tell you when your cat's litter is safe to eat. This fail-proof method turns your cat's feces into delectable bite-sized treats pre-proportioned perfectly by your very own feline. All you need to do is wait for the litter surrounding your cat's most recent deposit to turn green, wait 2 hours until it turns orange, then wait another 30 minutes until it has transitioned fully to purple. At this point, it is safe to eat, but only within the 2-hour window before it turns blue. If the poop turns blue, you have waited too long and you should not ingest. If blue poop is ingested after the 2-hour safety window, immediately drive to your nearest emergency room and seek the care of a professional. Yummy Litter! Fun for you and your family!
I am Milli Vanilli, I want me a Grammy. I am baking Jamaica, ha ha ha. Baking Jamaica, I'm baking Jamaica, I'm baking man.
Ladies, aren't we always hearing about men and their needs? How they always need time to escape and unwind in their man caves. What about us? Well, with Man Slave, you can get more done than you ever thought possible. While your man relaxes and disassociates in his man cave, your man slave can cook, clean, and service more than your Lexus, if you know what I mean. Ladies, invest in yourself this season and order your very own Man Slave today. Note, Man Slaves only come in Caucasian, off-white, and eggshell.
And I'm baking Jamaica, man.
If you're always brooding and feeling misunderstood, then keep listening. Scientists have spent decades researching this fail-proof method for curing the SADs. If you've experienced failed relationship after failed relationship and alienate all your friends by exhausting topics they don't want to hear about, like your new special interest hobby, assembling and painting miniature figurines from Firefly, then this trusted centuries-old remedy might be right for you. It's called calling your mom. When life's got you down and you're wearing a frown, never forget this classic standby. Your mom.
Baking Jamaica, I'm baking Jamaica, man.
Welcome back to the show. Let's dive right in. I recently encountered a couple white guys holding fast to their self-described Jufros. Well, actually, not their Jufros, they were cartoon avatar Jufros. But still, they were holding fast. Let me explain. There's this live podcasting app I use called Stereo. And this isn't an ad, this is really part of the story. And on this app, you must create a cartoon avatar of yourself in order to use it. The app has only been around for 6 months, but in that time, we've already seen digital blackface, blackfishing scandals, and now Afro Army Gate. It's cancel culture at its peak, basically. It's important to know this backstory because in this already racially charged environment, the creation of an Afro army could not have been innocent. White people on the app have been brutally and justifiably called out for using digital blackface and AAVE, with some even maliciously trying to deceive others and portray themselves as black. It's hard to believe that two people without much of a following otherwise did not contrive this entire situation, curating their avatars to have matching afros on their white faces purely to stir controversy, using hashtag AfroArmy for added clickbait. Then, when confronted about their avatars being digital blackface, they both deny it vehemently, insisting that they are Jewish, could grow a fro if they wanted to, and any criticism against them amounted to anti-Semitism. I don't want to be indelicate. Anti-Semitism is alive and well in this country, and I take it and fascism very seriously. But what this amounted to was two white men bullying black women over their right to have a fucking cartoon afro. Neither of them even have hair like this in real life. Here's how it ties back around to white dreads. When informed how their avatars and Afro Army campaign could be received, instead of replying, "Hey, oops, good looking out, thanks for holding us accountable, we won't do it again," they doubled down, urging as many people as they could, who only happened to be white men, by the way, to also don the cartoon fro. They started DMing and tagging Black Stereo users in discussions about race and hair to the point of harassment. They make false claims about the history of the hairstyle, even stating that because it was white slave owners who coined the use of the word afro in reference to the hairstyle, that they can use it. Okay, we're gonna have to stop and go back for that one. I mean, regardless of whether or not that's true, because I don't think it is, but I'm not sure I can verify or deny it unequivocally, how is that the defense you're going to cling to? Slave owners invented the word afro so white people can use it? WHAT. What? Is that the same argument white people have used to justify using the N-word? Asking for a friend. In San Francisco in 2016, in a video that went viral involving a white man with dreads being confronted by a black woman, footage shows a 47-second clip where the white man is animated and defensive. The video starts in the middle of the exchange, but the man is clearly gaslighting the woman, whose body language is calm and subdued. He, however, is gesturing wildly and saying, "You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture? Why?" She's calm and barely audible in the video when she replies, "Because it's my culture. Do you know what locks mean?" He interrupts her and loudly scoffs, "Do you know that it was an Egyptian culture? Are you Egyptian?" All the while gyrating and flailing his hands. "No, man, you're not," he says at her. Laughing, she replies, "Are you Egyptian?" To which she says, "Nah, but it doesn't matter." She begins to start a response when he dismissively says, "You know what, girl?" and starts to walk away. The woman blocks the path to the stairs and he continues, "You have no right to tell me what to wear." She tries to get him to come back so they can finish the conversation, but a scuffle ensues where they both shove at each other. Later, reports say San Francisco State University campus police were called to the scene, and following the incident, the woman's social media went dark, as White Dread Guy racked up comment after comment supporting him and vilifying the woman. What's heartbreaking to me about the video is that what that woman did was an act of bravery. She said something, and from what I could see, was calm and willing to educate, and this man was irate, defensive, and immediately on the attack. His body language and tone of voice was elevated and wild. She stood her ground and was reasonable, and he threw a tantrum. Campus police then forged a, quote, investigation, and countless media outlets demonized this woman, while online commentators doxed her into silence. The guy was interviewed by several local stations and made a follow-up YouTube video in which he tries to explain the difference between appropriation and appreciation, and how his dreads aren't appropriation, like, say, wearing a Native American headdress to a festival. Why aren't we listening to Black, Indigenous, and people of color? In the video clip, he screams in the woman's face that he can have dreads because Egyptians do, while an actual Black person is trying to tell him something different. And that, my friends, is appropriation. Honestly, I'm not going to be able to prove whether white people wearing dreads is appropriation or not, because the people who don't think that it is are going to discount any pushback right out the gate anyway. I'm done trying to convince white people with dreads that it's appropriation, because at the end of the day, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. White people with dreads can scream at me till they're blue in the face that it's about appreciation and list all their black friends that think it's okay. I'm not gonna change them. It's the defensiveness and entitlement that's disrespectful. In the end, rather than try to convince anyone of anything, I still can't help but wonder, what the fuck is up with white people in dreads? That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. I'm Antisocial, and this is the Antisocial Network. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at the Antisocial Network, catch me on the app Stereo, and listen to bonus episodes and support my dream of content creation by joining my Patreon for only $5 a month. That's my show. See you next Wednesday. Later.
But I'm antisociable, yeah. Antisociable.